Ontario offers retirement homes, nursing homes, and long-term care homes. But is this combination of seniors housing meeting the needs of the province's aging population? Joining us now for more on that, Owen Callan. He's Director of Policy with the Service Employees International Union. Candice Chartier, CEO of the Ontario Long-Term Care Association. Donna Holwell, President of the Board of Directors for the Ontario Retirement Communities Association. And Jane Meadus, lawyer with the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly. And we'd like to hear from you on this topic as well. Our online editor, Daniel Kitts, and producer, Hilary Clark, are hosting a Twitter chat right now, so join the conversation using the hashtag AgendaTVO. Welcome, everybody. Nice to have you here in our studio today. Let me just put some numbers up here, if we could, control room, just to sort of set the lay of the land here. Seniors in residence in the province of Ontario. Here we go. In the long-term care sector, 634 homes with 77,000 plus beds. Registered retirement homes, 680 of them with 51,000 beds. So we're talking about a lot of beds and a lot of people here, but different settings, and we want to get a better understanding of what's going on right now. So Candice, can I start with you here? Sure. Let's just do basics. What's a long-term care facility?
A long-term care home, we call it, is a skilled a facility where you can get nursing care 24/7. You don't have to pay to get in. We accept all residents, and we're legislated by the Long-Term Care Homes Act.
You didn't like that I called it a facility, eh?
Yeah, we call it home.
Call it a home?
Yeah.
Because it is home.
It is.
It's where people live.
And it's the Long-Term Care Homes Act. So, yeah, it is a home. It's a home where people live and cohabitate and get all the care needs met that they need to be met.
How do you get one?
You go through a process through the CCAC and you get an assessment done.
Community Care Access Center.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and you have to reach a certain criteria, and once you've been assessed, you can go on a waiting list. And,
what's the criteria?
You have to be able, well, they changed the criteria with the new act that came in. You have to be over a certain age. You have to have a level of care needs that cannot be met at home or in the community. And I think that's going to change even more over the next year.
How
with
available
the shift
with the shift
to the community?
I see. How available are? In other words, if you want one of these beds, how available are they?
Well, that depends. It depends because we're over 630 homes. We're in almost every community across the province. There are some communities where you have newer homes and some communities where you have older homes close to those homes that. When it comes to residents' choice, they can choose one of the newer homes. So in some areas, the waiting list is quite extensive, and in some areas, there's no waiting list because of that.
Okay, so if somebody's watching right now and they've got a parent who they think pretty soon is going to be needing one of these homes, are they looking at waiting 6 months, a year, more?
It totally depends on where. It totally depends if there's one home in the community, depends what the community they're in. Some homes have waiting lists of 200 to 300 people that have a timeline of 6 to 7 years to get into those homes. Some homes have occupancy challenges right now in the province because they can't fill their beds.
Okay,
so it totally depends on what location you're in.
Right. Not to be morbid about this, but I presume, for obvious reasons, there is a significant turnover in clientele?
Yeah, the landscape has totally changed with long-term care. Whereas 5 years ago, you would have residents that would live in the homes for anywhere from 5 to 10 years. Now our average wait time, or our average length of stay in a nursing home is 1.6 years.
1.6?
Yeah, our clients have gotten a lot more frail. They're coming in a lot sicker, 2 or more comorbidities, at least an average of, I think, 9 medications per resident. So
your clients are older and sicker than they used to be?
Very. The acuity has changed immensely.
Okay. Donna?
Yes.
Retirement homes. Mm-hmm. How are they different?
They're very different because they're a part of the community. They're a housing option. And people choose to come into a retirement home, generally. So they can offer various types of housing. They can be anywhere from a very deluxe apartment-style building with lots of different amenities to something that's quite simple and not as many amenities. Some people don't require a lot of service, and some people might choose to pay for a variety of different services. So,
and just so we understand the difference between your clients and her clients, Hers are older and sicker, and yours are?
Well, our average age is still probably about 82 years old, but they tend to be more well, yes. And some of them actually may still have jobs in the community that they might go out to, and may still drive their own cars, for example. So it's not a predicator of coming into a retirement home is that you are necessarily needs-based. Certainly there are some needs that some people do move into retirement homes for, but sometimes that's not the case at all. Sometimes it's merely companionship.
And where a long-term care home, you might live there for a year or two, in your case?
Yeah, I don't know the actual number of that, but I would venture to guess that it's probably more than 4 years.
More than 4.
Yeah.
And we heard how difficult, depending on where you live in the province, it can be to get into a long-term care home. How about a retirement home?
There are places where there are wait lists for sure, but generally it's a little easier to get into a retirement home, and certainly there are occupancy challenges in some of the buildings throughout the province.
And Candace, one of the first things she told us was that you don't pay to go into a long-term care home. I guess we pay through our taxes, right?
Well, there's a copay system too.
Copay as well.
And there's preferred beds.
You said you don't pay.
If you can afford it, you can get a preferred bed.
Oh, I see. Okay. And a retirement home, what's the situation
It's totally
there?
private pay. Totally private pay. So yes, it's the senior that is looking after their own bill for their own services in the retirement home.
And can you give us a sense of the range of what it costs per month to do
Well,
that?
it really, because I said there are a vast variety of different buildings out there offering different amenities. It really depends on whether you're downtown Toronto in some sort of smaller country setting, and it would vary. I would say that the average, though, is probably around $2,500 a month.
$2,500 a month. Okay. So that sort of sets the scene, just gives us a bit of the lay of the land. Owen, I want to come to you now, because you represent a union that I guess has employees that work in both of these different facilities, right?
Yeah, that's right. We represent the folks who are out on the front line in nursing homes, in retirement homes, delivering hands-on care. The folks that are really sort of at the heart of our healthcare system.
Give us a sense of the work that your people do.
Sure. So they care for frail elderly, including folks with increasingly acute and sometimes persistent medical conditions. And so I think the key question that sort of arises for folks on the front line, and I think for a lot of families and folks who find themselves in these facilities, is the promise that gets made around the care that they will receive in these homes, matched by what's delivered in reality? Are we fulfilling the promise to our seniors in terms of allowing them to age with dignity? Are we fulfilling the promise of providing them with the care they need to live well in their old age?
Okay, before you get there though, let's find out what that care actually is. I mean, are you feeding and bathing and changing beds and I mean all the basics, I guess, eh?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the things that you do every day in your life that you've become accustomed to, they can become more challenging as you reach a certain age. Folks become more frail. Their medical conditions can converge to the point that some of the basic acts of day-to-day life become quite challenging, and so they need folks in these homes to support them in that. And so that's a big part of what folks on the front line do. But another big component is companionship. Being that familiar face, being that voice, being that person that folks form a relationship with, form a bond with. And so the relationships that get formed on the front line between the people delivering the hands-on care, the people receiving it, and their extended families can be very strong and can be pretty meaningful.
Short-lived, though, from what I'm hearing.
Well, it all depends, but I mean, certainly, we hear and see tales all the time of caregivers, joining families when they get to the grieving stage, attending those funerals for the people that they cared for at the end of their life. So that is a part of the story. It is a part of the journey. Yeah.
Let me ask you this: this is not the work your people do is not glamorous work. This is hard work with some of the hardest to serve people, I think it's fair to say, in our society. Who does this kind of work? What kind of person?
Well, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. It's not glamorous work, and it's rarely in the spotlight. To a large extent, it takes place behind closed doors. There's not a lot of visibility. There's not a lot of transparency for the public, and sometimes for families in terms of what's going on behind those walls. And so the people that are drawn to this work tend to be people that feel compelled to care. They have a lot of compassion.
So mostly women?
Mostly women, absolutely. More than 80% of folks, sometimes an even higher percentage of folks doing this work are women. They come from diverse backgrounds. They may be new Canadians. They may be folks that have grown up or through the course of their working lives been in a care role, and it's a natural step for them to get into this line of work.
And your members, what differences do they see in the different facilities that they have to work in?
Well, I think what they see across the board is a gap between, I think, what we as a society would like to provide in terms of care, a gap between the promise that is made to people coming into these facilities and the actual care that they receive. So there's a significant shortfall in terms of the hours of care, hours of hands-on that people in facilities receive, compared to what they feel they need and often what they feel they were promised.
Okay, we've been baking the cake, and now you've got to put the icing on top and basically give us the broader perspective on all this. How well do you think the general Ontario public understands the various options and what's out there when it comes to elder care in this regard?
Sure. I don't think that people really understand what's out there. I think that people don't pay a lot of attention. There's going to be people watching today who are going to, be viewers who are going to watch this and say, oh, that doesn't really relate to me, put it in the back of their head and never think about it again for another 10 years until they're parent or they need care. And then there's the other ones who are all of a sudden thrust into these positions and are finding themselves, oh my goodness, now I have to find out. It's a very complicated system. Long-term care, I think you were saying that there is an age limit. That age limit is actually 18 to go into a long-term care home. So we see the range of people who are, very young people. We might see, read about in the paper where a family can't take care of a severely autistic child or something. They end up in long-term care, right up to the elderly, frail person with dementia.
So we should not assume this is only for older people.
We should not assume it's for only for older people. And unfortunately, we're seeing more and more people pushed into long-term care who really should be in supportive housing, group homes, other kind of housing. The retirement home sector, in fact, is 65 and older. That's actually in the legislation. It's a majority of people would be 65 and older. There will be some younger people, but if the majority are under the age of 65, could be providing exact same services, it's not a retirement home. So there's a real difference in that. When people go to look for long-term care or retirement homes, they have to understand are tenancies, so they come under the Residential Tenancies Act. There are very special rules with respect to retirement homes under the Retirement Homes Act, and some under the Residential Tenancies Act as well as they're called care homes. But they're tenancies, so you have to think of
by all the same rent review issues and all that.
Rent review and all of that. There's some special rules around the services, but people really have to understand that. And what would you expect your landlord to do? Because in effect, that's what they are. Whereas, the long-term care, you're applying through CCAC. It's government funded. You are paying a co-payment. Even 99.9% people pay around at least $1,200 or above.
$1,200 a month as a co-payment?
As a co-payment, yes.
Okay, how well do you think we're doing at getting the right people into the right and appropriate facilities?
I don't think we're doing a very good job because right now there is such a push on the system. Most people are not able to plan, for example, for long-term care. What happens is there's a serious event, the person's been at home, maybe they're being cared for by a loved one, or they have a stroke, something happens, they end up in hospital. When they're in hospital, there's a real pressure to push them out. They're called alternative level of care. They're seen as bed blockers, and there's a real push to get them out back into the community, perhaps into a retirement home. The long-term care beds aren't available because the lists are too long. So people are either going to long-term care homes that don't have waiting lists because potentially they may have a bad reporting record, they're struggling, there's issues perhaps, or they go into a retirement home because that's what they're told they have to do, and that's private pay. These are people who really should be in long-term care in many cases and are going to retirement home sector, which is really not in most cases what they need. And if you're looking at long-term care and you're ending up in retirement home, you're probably paying $4,000 to $6,000 a month for that level of care.
Okay, let's open it up. And on that last question, Candace, how well are we doing at getting the right people into the appropriate facilities?
I do
sorry.
agree. However, it is changing. There is a shift happening. We're not getting the inappropriate placements. CCAC has been more stringent, and actually there's been a diversion of the waiting list. And what we're seeing is we're not getting those placements anymore. But there are also really good things happening in long-term care with other clients. And I know there's one example where a facility shut down, and that long-term care home worked with the community sector to bring those clients in because there was nowhere else for them to go. And so they worked together, and the community supported that home, and it's been in place for almost 8 years, and it's been very good for those clients. So there's examples out there of where the long-term care has been the only solution for that community, and I think it largely depends on what the status is as well with the ALC in that area.
ALC?
And the alternate level of care.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it depends a lot on which community it is, which home it is.
We need a rule here today, friends.
No acronyms.
No acronyms. You got it. You got it. CCACs, ALCs, too much going on here. Donna, how about it? The right people into the right places. How tough's that?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult. And it's very difficult to assess a senior when they're in a hospital, because they've come to the hospital in some kind of acute state. It's not just because they're old that they got sent to the hospital. There's something going on with them. And what happens to a senior when they're in the hospital, and sometimes in a hospital bed for a couple of days, they become frail. They're not up walking around. It becomes very difficult for them, and they lose some of their function fairly quickly. So to be assessed for long-term care, or that you need a whole lot of support, can happen quite easily to a senior. And so there are different programs that are out there. Actually, I know of a home that has a program called Bridging You Home. And what that program does is it takes people from the hospital for a 3-week period. It is actually a LHIN-funded program that operates out of
Local Health Integration Network supported program.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then what happens is for 3 weeks that person gets physiotherapy, and the idea is that they do end up going back home, and they do.
So the idea is just intense, focused,
that's right.
3-week-long treatment, get them better, get them out.
Sending people back to their homes and expecting that they're going to rehab there on their own is a pretty big expectation sometimes, especially if they're going home and their partner is also elderly and can't assist with that kind of therapy.
I think you're going to see more of that with the senior strategy too.
Right.
And I would say that there's convalescent care in long-term care homes, and there's new regulations being proposed that will increase the amount of convalescent care, which is publicly funded in long-term care homes, and you can get up for 90 days. The question that we have, and that hasn't been answered by the ministry yet, is whether or not these increased number of beds are going to be taken out of the stock that we have. So out of that number that you were talking about on these beds where we have some places 200-300 people on the list, are you going to be carving out of the beds that are available for long-term care to use for convalescent? And we're hoping that they'll be adding beds as opposed to taking away from the system that we have now.
Candace, how typical is it for somebody to be in one of your homes, meaning they need much more intensive treatment because they're presumably sicker, but their health improves, and then they leave and they actually go live in a retirement home instead?
That's actually happened in the past. There's been residents that have come into some of the homes in wheelchairs, and because of the rehab program that is in place and the amazing staff that work in the homes, residents have ended up walking again and doing more for themselves and their activities of daily living. They take more ownership of that because they have that encouragement from the staff to be more independent.
They'd rather live in one of her homes than one of your, no disrespect intended, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
It's better to live in a retirement home than a long-term care facility. home. Sorry, did it again. Right? That's
Well, it is. There's a place
healthier.
for both. Yeah, you're healthier, and
It's appropriate
it's
level
the
of care.
level of care.
Right.
Yeah.
Appropriate level
But
care.
I think you have to remember, though, that we're talking about two very different sectors here, and that in the long-term care home, I think it's very unusual for someone to move. Frankly, it's very unusual. But you're talking about some retirement homes are great, and some don't provide a huge amount of care. And you really have to look, because it's very much of a buyer beware system. There's no requirements as to what a retirement home has to offer, what kind of staffing it has to have. So people who are in long-term care, they may need a lesser amount of care, but whether that's going to be available in a retirement home at a cost that they can afford is an issue as well.
okay. Let me because there's a few. There have been we're talking about regulations here. There have been some new regulations over the last 5-6 years. And let's just put this graphic up and we can sort of take people through this, because the government moved to rewrite the regs for all of these facilities. First, they replaced the Charitable Homes Act, the Homes for the Aged and the Rest Homes Act, and the Nursing Homes Act with a single piece of legislation called the Long-Term Care Homes Act. That was 2007. Came into force in 2010. Next, for the first time, legislation's been enacted to regulate retirement homes in the province with the Retirement Homes Act of 2010. And finally, the province created a Ontario Personal Support Worker Registry, which got off the ground last year. This is a lot, Donna, a lot of change on paper. How does it actually affect the way people live?
Well, legislation is very new in our sector, as you said, declared in 2010. And at the moment, retirement homes were required to be licensed as of this past July, so July 2012. So it's something that our sector is still getting used to, and there's a lot of education that has to go on in our sector. The Ontario Retirement Communities Association is prepping its members to ensure that they're educated with the new regulations and how to meet the new regulations and make sure that they stay in compliance of all that they're now expected to do.
Let me go to Owen on that. Presumably, this additional level of regulation was brought in to address problems, concerns that clients had in the past. Again, you represent the people who work in these places. Yep. Does it seem to you like things are improving as a result of these regs?
Well, it's a great question, and I've had an opportunity over the last couple of weeks to go out and to speak to people on the front line in nursing homes around the province. And in retirement homes, and to talk about what we have seen in the last 6 months in terms of the impact of the changes that government has been pushing through regulation and through a series of recent announcements promising more funding for care in long-term care facilities. And what, in fact, we have seen over the last 6 months is that the amount of care available to seniors and others in these facilities is dropping. So the amount of hours of care that people are receiving has declined.
Why?
In many cases over the last 6 months. Well, it's a great question. Why? Why, if there's a commitment on the part of the province, if funding into these facilities is increasing, why is care dropping? Why are staffing levels dropping? And I think the first thing I would say is that the province needs to be asking that question. And right now, there is no transparency, there is no reporting, there is no requirement attached to that funding that compels the folks who operate these homes to report how many hours of care are people receiving.
Report to whom?
Report to the province that provides funding in the cases of nursing home facilities. I mean, you sort of alluded to the fact that one way or another, as Ontarians, we pay either through tax dollars or directly for these services. So where is the accountability? And what you'll see is that in other jurisdictions across North America, in places like Saskatchewan and Alberta, across the pond in Europe, there's a requirement not just to report the hours of care, but to meet a minimum threshold, a minimum standard of care across these types of facilities.
Jane,
that doesn't exist in Ontario.
Let me go to Jane on that. Is there inadequate oversight or regulation in this area?
Absolutely. We have the Long-Term Care Homes Act, which had a lot of promises with respect to what it was going to do. It, took these other pieces of legislation, a big manual, put it all together. There wasn't a lot new. There's some new things, but what it did do is put in a new compliance system. Unfortunately, it has been reactive instead of proactive. They are doing mostly complaint-driven or critical incident-driven reporting. So they only go out and do inspections when there's something has happened. They were supposed to do annual inspections, full inspections. As of April last year, they had done 53, which was in about a 2-year time frame out of the 600 odd. So it's gone from mandatory once a year. They've determined how they were going to be talking about what an annual inspection was, so that's been a problem. In the retirement home sector, we don't have the Retirement Home Regulatory Authority. That's the group that oversees the retirement homes, does inspections, licensing. They don't do inspections yet. That isn't coming in until 2014. And when you look at things like how many hours are you getting in a retirement home, that's all supposed to be part of the information you're getting. When we represent clients and go and ask homes, well, how many hours is this? They refuse to give it to us. They won't tell us like how many hours you're getting for a bath, or if you're getting 4 hours of care, how do they count that? And
okay.
so there's
Stand
not a
by.
lot of...
I want to give you two a chance to respond, but before you do, let me, because we all remember, I think, it was, I think a few years back now already, the Toronto Star did a pretty big takeout series on this issue, and this was from their editorial, which came in last fall's edition of the paper in November 18th. The province's Liberal government bragged that it was taking strong action to protect seniors by creating a Retirement Homes Act, a new set of rules to be enforced by an oversight body. Now, just months after the Retirement Homes Regulatory Authority began issuing operating licenses, it's become clear that the rules are weak and useless for those who can't complain, mostly the vulnerable poor. The authority has just 12 inspectors to investigate 677 retirement homes, but only if those residents are brave enough to lodge a complaint. Even then, the basic new rules fall short of proper oversight, especially since the privately owned homes can sell complex medical care. Even in old age, a Darwinian existence prevails. If you hope to live for, say, 5 more years and don't have $500,000 in the bank, your survival may be dependent on the benevolence of others. What a terrifying end. Okay, Candace, you first.
I'd like to just add some context to the last two conversations. First with the staffing and the minimum staffing. I don't think realistically we can do that, and the reason being that each resident is basically funded on their capabilities and their individual case mix measure, their case mix index. And for us to go to a certain level of care, of hours of care, you're not being adequately serving those needs on an individual basis. In long-term care, the care is very individualized, and the funding is now focused on that with the shift from the Alberta system to the new MDS-RI. What the new MDS-RI system does, the funding system, is it actually makes you look at that individualization a little bit clearer. So to put in a set number of hours per day just wouldn't work.
So, I think those are very valid points. And I think we've been hearing from the industry now for more than a decade about the fact that essentially it's got everything in hand. It's developing the care plans for individuals. We should simply leave it in the homes of the companies that operate these facilities. But I think what we've seen from the exposés and the Toronto Star and what we saw in the recent report from the province's nursing home task force, which the industry and others participated in, is that there is serious neglect taking place inside the facilities where we care for the elderly in the province.
Some of it, I hasten to add, perpetuated by your members.
Absolutely. I think that there are certainly cases and incidents of abuse that have been documented around the province, and I think collectively there's a view there should be absolutely zero tolerance. That should be rooted out and punished.
Is your solution to this to nationalize the whole system?
No, not at all. But Steve, at the moment we have a publicly funded system in Ontario. We're pumping in public dollars, and we're not getting the accountability to the province. We're not getting the transparency around hours of care. So, for example, if you were to go not far from where we're sitting right now, to home at York Mills and Don Mills here in Toronto, you'd find that they'd cut the staffing levels quite significantly over the last few weeks. I received a memo this morning that was distributed by another long-term care facility on February 1st, announcing severe cuts to staffing levels and care levels at another facility. Well, I think this is the key question, because it's not happening in isolated cases. We're seeing it on a systemic basis, and we're seeing that challenge of neglect happening across the system.
Okay, I don't want to run short on time here without giving these two a chance to respond. Do you want to respond to that first, and then we'll hear Donna? Okay.
So, the reason you're getting the layoffs is the recent shift to the new funding, and with RIE MDS, it was phased in over several years. So you had phases 1 to 5, and then you have phases 6 to 8. So the ministry has been working with the associations and a group to determine what is the best way to measure these individualizations of the residents. And so what's happened is they've come up with a new way that basically, I believe out of the 5 options, this is the best option. Unfortunately, a lot of homes stayed the same CMI or went up, but they're case mix index, and it's what you get funded on. And what's happened is that there is a large number of homes that their case mix index went down. And that means hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they do have to lay off because they can't.
So let's stick with that.
I got to let Donna have a chance to respond.
Can I just say one more thing about...
You finish your point, and then we'll come back.
And then with the compliance, I respectfully disagree with you, only because I came from the sector and I was a part of the old compliance and the part of the new compliance. And although the inspectors aren't out there in the full-blown 5 to 8 day inspections that they were supposed to be doing, which a lot of them were completed, 50, whatever, what they do now is, they are in the home a lot, because if there is a critical incident report, or if there is an anonymous call or a report to the hotline, the ministry's there. And what I like about the new inspection system, it's risk-based, but it's on interviewing. So they come in and they talk to the staff, and they talk to the residents, and they get the clear idea of what's happening in that home. So it's very two-way, and it gives the residents and the staff a voice. So I think it's a much easier system.
We shifted here from first talking about the Retirement Home Act and quickly moving into the Long-Term Care Act, which are completely different. And so, as I said, the Retirement Home Act, the Retirement Home Regulatory Authority actually is fairly new. And they still are in the licensing phase, looking at compliance to licensing and trying to get all the different buildings licensed. They are investigating complaints, and they do have a complaints hotline, and they do send inspectors out to investigate complaints. So that's kind of where we're at with the whole regulatory framework for retirement homes. Very different. We're not.
But you don't take tax dollars, right?
We absolutely do not.
So should there be a different burden of accountability and regulation on retirement homes because they don't accept public? They're not funded by the taxpayer in the same way long-term care homes are.
Sure. I mean, I think that the new way which we're hearing described looks a lot like the old way in many important respects. And you take the example of a chain like Rivera, a for-profit operator of about 59 nursing homes across Ontario, where you're seeing pretty heavy cuts in care over the last few months. But importantly, also operates retirement homes. So we're talking a lot about the difference between these facilities, and it's important to keep in mind that there's a common denominator between them as well, which is they're run by the same companies. They've got the same CEO. So if you take an operator like Extendicare, we've got a CEO who's making about $1.2 million in take-home pay per year, much of it funded out of public dollars. We're seeing very.
Sorry, is that right? Much of it funded out of public dollars?
Yeah, that's right. A lot of the money that we're investing as a province, and also a lot of the money that people are paying privately to these facilities, are going to executive compensation, so CEO salaries on the one hand, and then another place that a lot of it is going is to investors, institutional investors. So a lot of the operators who provide services, both through the publicly funded nursing home system, but also through the private system, are making increasing payouts to investors
that
and shareholders.
That speaks to what I was saying a moment ago, which sounds like you have a problem with the fact that the private sector is involved with this.
Not at all. I don't have any difficulty.
You just think they're overpaid?
I think they need to make sure that the care comes first, that it's the front line and not the bottom line that comes first. And I think right now we're not necessarily getting the balance right in this province.
Jane, you wanted to say?
Well, there's so much to say. I did want to talk about the compliance, though, because I agree with you. The new compliance system is better. Where I have the issue is that they're only going in on the complaints. And when you look at the statistics and you look at the ministry's own statistics, what they find when they go in on a complaint or a critical incident, so if something's happened, someone died and they have to go in and look at something, what they find is extremely different than when they go in on a full inspection, and they're not doing those full inspections. So instead of clarifying things and doing, and absolutely when they go in on the full, they do talk to people, and they talk to lots of people, staff, residents, families. They're missing a whole picture of things where they would be able to stop things from happening. So instead of allowing the abuse or the neglect or whatever to happen, and then we're going to, react. With respect to the retirement homes, I think that one of the issues with the fees is that while the rental portion is regulated, so they can only, it's under rent control.
Right.
The other portion isn't, and we have seen homes that have tried to increase by 100% their fees for the care. And if you're living there and you don't have a lot of choices because you can't go to long-term care because there's no beds, they really have a captive market sometime, and there's been a lot of issues around that.
Okay, forgive me, because we're down to, I think, about 2.5 minutes to go, and I do want to touch on one last thing before the clock expires on us. Society's getting older. We're going to need the services you're providing a lot more going forward. How ready are we for this seniors bulge?
I think with the recent announcement of the Dr. Samir Sinha's senior strategy, I know from our aspect, we were consulted with him, and we had a lot of our expert panel report. We communicated a lot of that to him, and we were really pleased to see a lot of our recommendations in our expert panel report be highlighted in some of his findings. So what you're going to see, I think, is a more collaborative approach to seniors care, especially between retirement and nursing home. You're going to see more innovation, more research-based. I think you'll see, in some cases, long-term care homes being that hub of care in some of those communities where it's only the long-term care home that's there. You're going to look at an assess and restore phase.
Okay, let me save 30 seconds for Donna here. Go ahead.
Well, Dr. Sinha's report certainly did talk about community-based services, and we did have an opportunity to have an audience with him, and certainly would like to be part of the solution. As happened here today, it's pretty easy to railroad the discussion mostly to long-term care, and retirement home can offer affordable, viable options if we're brought to the table.
And the client is, right service for the right client.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
We never covered all here, but that's a pretty good going over of some of the issues that are both in the headlines and what we're having to look forward to. So thanks to everybody for coming in and helping us out with this discussion this week. Owen Callan, Director of Policy, Service Employees International Union; Ken Deschartier, CEO, Ontario Long-Term Care Association; Donna Holwell, President, Board of Directors, Ontario Retirement Communities Association; and Jane Meadis, the lawyer for the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly. Thanks, everybody.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.